The message notification chimed on my phone at exactly 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. What I saw in those photos would unravel 2 marriages, destroy 3 careers, and teach me that sometimes the universe delivers justice in the most unexpected packages. My husband's secretary had just made the biggest mistake of her life by sending me evidence of her affair with my husband. But here's the twist she never saw coming. I didn't just expose her to Derek's boss, I sent every single photo to her husband Marcus, too. And what happened next? Well, let's just say revenge is a dish best served with a side of poetic justice. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning of my 38th birthday started like any other Tuesday in our Pearl District townhouse. Portland's autumn mist clung to the windows of our modern home, and I could hear Derek already moving around downstairs, probably making his signature espresso that he claimed was better than any coffee shop in the city. The sound of our teenagers, Sophie and Ryan, getting ready for school created the familiar symphony of our family life. After 15 years of marriage, I thought I knew every note of this daily routine. Derek had been particularly attentive lately, bringing me flowers for no reason, suggesting weekend getaways to the coast, and even volunteering to handle the grocery shopping. At the time, I attributed his newfound thoughtfulness to our approaching wedding anniversary next month. We'd been planning a renewal ceremony, something small and intimate to celebrate how far we'd come since our college days at Oregon State. I'd put my marketing career on hold when Sophie was born, transitioning to freelance consulting work that allowed me flexibility with the kids' schedule. Our life in Portland had unfolded exactly as we'd dreamed during those late-night conversations in our tiny apartment near campus. Derek's financial advisory firm, Northwest Financial Advisors, had grown from a small startup to one of the most respected wealth management companies in the Pacific Northwest. We'd bought our dream home in the Pearl District 5 years ago, complete with exposed brick walls, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a rooftop garden where I grew herbs and vegetables. Sophie was thriving in her junior year of high school, already talking about colleges and her dreams of becoming a veterinarian. Ryan had just made varsity soccer as a freshman, following in his father's athletic footsteps. Derek kissed my cheek that morning before leaving for work, his usual routine unchanged. He smelled like the expensive cologne I'd given him for Father's Day, and his tie was perfectly knotted in the way that had attracted me to him all those years ago. There was something almost corporate perfection about Derek Thompson. At 42, he still maintained the lean build of his college tennis days, and his salt and pepper hair gave him the distinguished look that clients trusted with their retirement funds and investment portfolios. Northwest Financial Advisors occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in downtown Portland, and Derek's corner office on the 20th floor offered panoramic views of Mount Hood on clear days. He'd worked his way up from junior analyst to senior partner through a combination of natural charm, analytical brilliance, and what I'd always admired as an almost supernatural ability to make people feel comfortable discussing their deepest financial fears and dreams. His client list included some of Oregon's wealthiest families, and his success had afforded us luxuries I'd never imagined growing up in a middle-class family in suburban Eugene. The irony wasn't lost on me that Derek built his career on trust. Clients entrusted him with their life savings, their children's college funds, their retirement security. He prided himself on transparency, often telling potential clients that his firm's motto was, "Your financial clarity is our commitment." He kept family photos prominently displayed in his office, and I'd often accompanied him to client dinners where he'd introduce me with genuine warmth as his partner in all things. We were the picture of stability that his wealthy clients wanted to see managing their money. That Tuesday morning, I spent time in my home office working on a marketing campaign for a local organic skincare company. Freelance consulting had allowed me to maintain professional connections while being available for school pickups, soccer games, and the 1,000 small emergencies that come with raising teenagers. The work was intellectually stimulating without the political pressures of corporate life, and it provided enough income to feel like I was contributing to our family's financial success rather than simply benefiting from Derek's career. Around noon, I took a break to prepare lunch and noticed Derek had left his college tennis trophy on the kitchen counter. He'd been reminiscing lately about his athletic days, perhaps feeling nostalgic as his 40th birthday approached next spring. I made a mental note to move it back to his office bookshelf when I went upstairs. These small domestic details felt significant in retrospect, tiny clues that Derek was revisiting his youth in ways I hadn't fully understood. The kitchen in our townhouse had become the heart of our family life, with its marble island where the kids did homework while I prepared dinner, and French doors that opened onto our small but carefully tended garden. I'd spent countless hours at that island, helping with algebra problems, listening to teenage drama, and sharing the kind of mundane daily conversations that create the foundation of family intimacy. Sophie often complained about her AP classes while Ryan regaled us with detailed accounts of soccer practice politics. I remember feeling particularly content that afternoon, looking forward to my birthday dinner reservation Derek had made at Le Pigeon, one of Portland's most celebrated restaurants. He'd been mysterious about his gift, only saying that it was something special he'd been planning for months. I assumed it might be the art class I'd mentioned wanting to take, or perhaps a weekend trip to the coast. Derek had always been thoughtful about gifts, remembering casual comments I'd made, and turning them into surprises that showed he'd been listening. Our marriage had weathered the typical challenges of raising children, building careers, and maintaining intimacy through the exhaustion of daily life. We'd gone through couples counseling briefly when Sophie was in middle school and Derek was working 70-hour weeks trying to make partners. That period had taught us better communication skills and helped us prioritize our relationship alongside our individual ambitions. I thought we'd emerged stronger, more committed to transparency and emotional honesty. Derek's recent attentiveness had felt like a return to our early marriage, when he'd surprise me with coffee in bed, or suggest spontaneous weekend adventure. He'd been asking more questions about my work, showing interest in my clients and projects in a way that made me feel valued as more than just the mother of his children. When he suggested we hire a house cleaner to give me more time for my business, I interpreted it as supportive rather than suspiciously generous. The afternoon sun was streaming through our living room windows when my phone chimed with the notification that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my life. I was curled up on our sectional sofa, reviewing marketing materials for an upcoming client presentation, when the message appeared from an unknown number. The preview showed what looked like a tropical beach scene, and my first thought was that it might be spam or a wrong number, but curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the message thread. What I saw made my stomach drop and my hands begin to shake. There were 12 photos in total, each one more devastating than the last. Derek and a beautiful woman with long dark hair were lounging by an infinity pool that overlooked turquoise water and white sand beaches. They weren't just sitting near each other like colleagues at a conference. They were touching, kissing, sharing intimate moments that belonged in a honeymoon album, not a business trip. The woman looked familiar, though it took me a moment to place her. When recognition hit, it felt like a physical blow. Natasha Rivera had joined Northwest Financial Advisors about 18 months ago as Derek's executive assistant. I'd met her at the company holiday party last December, where she'd been charming and professional, complimenting my dress and asking thoughtful questions about my consulting work. She was 28, recently married herself, and had struck me as ambitious, but respectful of boundaries. In the photos, Natasha wore a red bikini that emphasized her curves, and Derek looked more relaxed and happy than I'd seen him in months. They were drinking champagne, feeding each other tropical fruit, and posing like lovers on what was obviously an expensive vacation. The resort looked luxurious, with those overwater bungalows that cost thousands of dollars per night. This wasn't a quick affair or a moment of weakness. This was a full-blown romantic getaway, planned and executed with the kind of attention to detail Derek usually reserved for his most important client presentations. But the photos themselves weren't the cruelest part of this message. Attached to the images was a note that made my blood run cold. Thought you should see how much fun Derek and I are having in Costa Rica. Don't worry, he told me all about how boring things have gotten at home. Thanks for being such an understanding wife. XOXO, Natasha. The casual cruelty of that message hit me like a slap. Not only was Derek cheating on me, but he was discussing our marriage with his mistress in terms that reduced me to a boring obstacle to their happiness. The laughing emoji she'd included felt like salt in an already devastating wound. This wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. served with a side of mockery that suggested they'd been laughing about me together. I sat in stunned silence for several minutes, staring at the photos and rereading the message. My first instinct was to call Derek immediately, to scream and demand explanations. But something stopped me. Maybe it was my old marketing instincts kicking in, or perhaps just survival mode. But I realized that reacting emotionally would put me at a disadvantage. Instead, I needed information. I started examining the photos more carefully, looking for details that might tell me how long this had been going on, and how serious it was. The level of comfort between them suggested this wasn't their first trip together. Derek's tan looked like he'd been spending time in the sun regularly, not just for a few days. In one photo, Natasha was wearing what looked like an engagement ring on her right hand, and I remembered she'd gotten married about 6 months after joining the company. The realization hit me like lightning. Natasha Rivera wasn't just Derek's mistress. She was a married woman, which meant her husband Marcus had no idea his wife was posting couples photos from a romantic vacation with her boss. This affair was destroying 2 marriages, not just mine, and I found myself wondering if Marcus Rivera deserved to know what his wife was doing with my husband. But first, I needed to understand the scope of this betrayal. I went to Derek's home office, a converted bedroom where he sometimes worked evenings and weekends. The space was meticulously organized, with financial journals arranged by date and client files secured in a locked cabinet. I'd always respected his privacy when it came to work documents, but today felt like all previous rules were suspended. His desk drawers were unlocked, and I began searching for anything that might explain how long this affair had been going on. I found credit card statements he'd been hiding from our shared financial management app, charges for jewelry I'd never received, and restaurant bills from places we'd never been together. There were hotel charges in Portland for nights when he'd claimed to be working late, and flight confirmations for trips to Costa Rica that dated back 4 months. In the bottom drawer, I discovered something that made my heart race. A small jewelry box containing a receipt for a diamond tennis bracelet purchased 3 weeks ago for $8,000. I'd never seen this bracelet, despite the fact that it had been charged to our joint credit card. The receipt was paper-clipped to a note in Derek's handwriting that read, "For my beautiful Natasha, who makes every day brighter." The financial evidence painted a picture of systematic deception. Derek had been using our family money to fund an affair that had been going on for months. The Costa Rica trip alone had cost over $15,000, charged to the credit card connected to our mortgage account. He'd been stealing from our children's college funds to pay for romantic getaways with his secretary. As I gathered this evidence, my phone continued to buzz with notifications. More photos were arriving from the same unknown number, including videos of Derek and Natasha dancing on what looked like a beach restaurant patio. In one video, I could hear Derek's voice clearly as he said, "Claire would never try dancing like this. She's gotten so predictable and boring over the years." The casual way he dismissed our 15-year marriage to impress another woman felt like a betrayal beyond the physical affair. This wasn't just about sex or midlife crisis. Derek had been actively undermining our relationship, using me as a negative comparison to make Natasha feel special. Every private moment of our marriage, every intimate detail of our life together, had apparently become material for his seduction of another woman. But as I sat surrounded by evidence of my husband's betrayal, something unexpected happened. Instead of falling apart, I felt a cold clarity settling over me. The marketing strategist in me began to see this situation as a problem that required a solution, not just an emotional crisis to endure. Derek and Natasha had made a crucial mistake by documenting their affair so thoroughly, and then sending the evidence directly to me. They'd handed me everything I needed to destroy them both. The first thing I did was screenshot every single photo and video Natasha had sent me. My hands were steadier than I expected as I methodically saved each piece of evidence to a secure folder on my laptop. Years of managing marketing campaigns had taught me the importance of documentation, and I approached this personal catastrophe with the same methodical precision I'd once used to track competitor analysis or consumer behavior data. I spent the next hour researching Natasha Rivera's social media presence, something I'd never bothered to do when Derek first hired her. Her Instagram account was public, filled with carefully curated photos of her life with Marcus Rivera. They'd been married for exactly 14 months, based on the anniversary post she'd shared just 3 weeks ago. Marcus worked as a software engineer at Nike's headquarters in Beaverton, and from his own social media presence, he appeared to be a devoted husband who regularly posted admiring photos of his wife at company events and weekend adventures around Oregon. The contrast between Natasha's public persona and her private behavior was staggering. On Instagram, she presented herself as a dedicated wife who loved hiking with Marcus on weekends and cooking elaborate meals for their small social circle. Her bio read, "Blessed wife, adventure seeker, living my best life in beautiful Oregon." The hypocrisy was almost breathtaking. Here was a woman who publicly celebrated her marriage while privately destroying mine. I found Marcus's LinkedIn profile and learned that he'd been with Nike for 6 years, working his way up from junior developer to senior software architect. His colleagues had endorsed him for skills like team leadership and ethical problem-solving, descriptions that made my heart ache for what he was about to discover about his wife. From everything I could gather online, Marcus Rivera was a decent man who deserved to know that his wife was charging luxury vacations with her boss to credit cards connected to their joint bank accounts. The financial investigation revealed the full scope of Derek's deception. Over the past 4 months, he'd charged over $30,000 in unexplained expenses to our various credit cards and investment accounts. Beyond the Costa Rica trips, there were charges for spa weekends in wine country, expensive dinners at Portland's finest restaurants, and jewelry purchases that had never made their way to me. Derek had even used our business credit card, the one connected to his partnership distributions from Northwest Financial Advisors, to pay for a weekend getaway to San Francisco that coincided with a conference I remembered him attending without me. But the most devastating discovery came when I accessed our shared financial planning software and realized Derek had been moving money from our children's college savings accounts to cover his affair expenses. Sophie's fund, which we'd been building since she was born, had been depleted by $12,000 over the past 6 months. Ryan's account showed similar unauthorized withdrawal. My husband hadn't just been cheating on me, he'd been stealing from our children's futures to fund his relationship with another woman. I printed bank statements, credit card bills, and investment account summaries, organizing them chronologically to create a timeline of financial fraud that would be impossible for Derek to explain away. My legal training from business school proved valuable as I documented each transaction with notes about Derek's claimed whereabouts on those days. The pattern was clear and damning. Every romantic expense corresponded with a business trip, client dinner, or late night at the office that Derek had used as cover for his affair. As I worked, more messages arrived from Natasha's phone number. She was clearly enjoying herself immensely, sending increasingly provocative photos and adding commentary designed to maximize my humiliation. One message included a video of Derek feeding her champagne and strawberries while she giggled and called him my generous dad. Another showed them in matching couples' massage robes with a note that read, "Derek says you never appreciated luxury anyway." The casual cruelty of these messages revealed something important about Natasha's character. This wasn't just an affair that had gotten out of hand. It was a calculated campaign to hurt me personally. She wanted me to know about their relationship, and she wanted me to suffer. The question was why? What had I ever done to Natasha Rivera to deserve this level of vindictive behavior? I remembered our conversation at the company holiday party more clearly now. She'd asked detailed questions about my marriage, my work, and my relationship with Derek. At the time, I'd thought she was just being friendly and getting to know the boss's wife. Now I realized she'd been conducting reconnaissance, gathering information about my life that she could later use to undermine my marriage. The compliments about my dress and my work had been part of an elaborate deception designed to make me trust her while she planned to destroy my family.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
The realization that this affair had been premeditated rather than spontaneous changed everything. Derek and Natasha hadn't fallen into an unexpected attraction. They deliberately constructed a relationship built on lies and financed with stolen money. Every business trip, every late night at the office, Every client dinner had been carefully orchestrated to provide cover for their affair. They'd turned my trust in Derek's professional commitments into a weapon against our marriage. I decided to call Rachel Martinez, my closest friend from college, who'd become a successful family law attorney in Portland. Rachel had helped other friends navigate difficult divorces, and I trusted her judgment about legal strategies and emotional support. When she answered on the second ring, I could hear the concern in her voice as soon as I identified myself. Rachel listened without interruption as I explained the situation, occasionally making small sounds of shock or anger, but never rushing me through the story. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment before responding. "Claire, I'm so sorry this is happening to you, but from a legal standpoint, you're in a very strong position. The financial fraud alone gives us grounds for immediate asset protection, and the evidence you've gathered will be crucial if this goes to court." We arranged to meet the following morning at her office, but Rachel gave me some immediate advice about protecting myself financially. She walked me through the process of freezing our joint credit cards and investment accounts, and helped me understand my rights regarding the house and Derek's partnership in Northwest Financial Advisor. Most importantly, she warned me not to confront Derek directly until we'd secured legal protections for my financial interests. But as we talked, I found myself thinking more about Marcus Rivera than about my own legal strategy. This man had no idea that his wife was sending humiliating messages to another woman while vacationing with that woman's husband. He was probably at work right now, writing code and attending meetings, trusting that his wife was handling executive assistant duties for Derek's financial planning firm. The betrayal he was about to experience would be just as devastating as mine, and he deserved to know the truth before Natasha could construct more elaborate lies. After ending my call with Rachel, I spent time researching Northwest Financial Advisor's corporate structure and employee policy. Derek had always been proud of working for a firm that maintained strict ethical standards, particularly regarding conflicts of interest and personal conduct. The company's website prominently featured their commitment to integrity and trustworthiness, values that were apparently more marketing copy than actual practice when it came to Derek's behavior. I discovered that Jonathan Hayes, the managing partner, had built Northwest Financial Advisor's reputation on conservative family values and ethical business practices. The firm managed retirement accounts for several religious organizations and had a client base that included many traditional families who valued moral consistency in their financial advisor. A scandal involving infidelity and financial misconduct would be devastating to the company's carefully constructed image. The employee handbook, which I found cached on an internet archive site, included specific language about personal conduct and conflicts of interest. Section 12 clearly stated that romantic relationships between supervisors and subordinates were strictly prohibited and could result in immediate termination. There was also explicit language about using company resources for personal gain, which would certainly apply to Derek's use of business credit cards and travel accounts to fund his affair. But beyond the corporate policies, I learned something else about Jonathan Hayes that made me confident he would take swift action against Derek. Hayes was a widower who'd raised 3 daughters as a single father after his wife died of cancer 8 years earlier. His personal story, featured in several Portland Business Journal articles, emphasized his commitment to family values and ethical leadership. This was not a man who would tolerate an employee using company resources to fund an extramarital affair, especially when that affair involved financial fraud against the employee's own family. As the afternoon wore on, I continued receiving photos and videos from Natasha. The messages were becoming more frequent and more deliberately hurtful. She sent a video of Derek talking about how much happier he was away from domestic responsibilities, and another of them planning future trips to Europe and Asia. In one particularly cruel message, she included a photo of expensive jewelry Derek had apparently given her, along with a note that read, "Derek says you wouldn't appreciate anything this beautiful anyway." But with each message, Natasha was providing me with more evidence of their affair and more proof of Derek's financial misconduct. She was documenting their relationship so thoroughly that I wouldn't need to hire a private investigator or spend months gathering evidence. Every photo included metadata showing dates, times, and locations. Every video contained clear audio of Derek making statements that would be devastating in divorce proceedings. Natasha Rivera, in her eagerness to hurt me, was building the case against herself and Derek with remarkable efficiency. I began researching Marcus Rivera more thoroughly, trying to understand what kind of man I was about to devastate with news about his wife's infidelity. His social media presence painted a picture of someone who was genuinely devoted to Natasha and proud of the life they'd built together. He regularly posted photos of home improvement projects they'd undertaken in their Beaverton townhouse, and his captions revealed someone who was thoughtful and appreciative of his wife's contributions to their relationship. One Instagram post from 2 months ago particularly caught my attention. Marcus had posted a photo of Natasha in their kitchen, cooking what looked like an elaborate dinner, with the caption, "Coming home to this amazing woman every day reminds me how lucky I am." Natasha works so hard at her new job, but she still makes time to create these incredible meals for us. I married way above my league. The genuine affection in his words made my heart ache for what he was about to discover. I found myself in an ethical dilemma that I hadn't anticipated. Did I have the right to destroy Marcus Rivera's world just because his wife had destroyed mine? But as I thought about it more, I realized that Marcus deserved the truth about his marriage just as much as I did. Natasha and Derek had made the choice to involve innocent people in their deception. They'd used both of our marriages as cover for their affair, and they'd stolen money from both of our families to fund their relationship. The financial records I'd gathered showed that Derek had been extremely careless about hiding his spending. Every expensive dinner, every luxury hotel stay, every piece of jewelry had been charged to credit cards connected to our joint accounts. But I wondered whether Natasha had been equally careless with her own finance. If she was anything like Derek, she might have been using her joint accounts with Marcus to pay for her share of their romantic getaway. I decided to create a comprehensive timeline of Derek and Natasha's affair, cross-referencing the photos and videos she'd sent with financial records and Derek's claimed business activities. The pattern that emerged was staggering in its scope and duration. This affair had been going on for at least 6 months, possibly longer, and it involved systematic deception on a scale that went far beyond casual infidelity. Every Thursday for the past 4 months, Derek had claimed to be attending client dinners or working late on portfolio review. But the photos Natasha sent included several taken on Thursday evenings at expensive Portland restaurants where they were clearly on romantic dates rather than business meetings. Derek had been using his professional reputation and client relationships as cover for a weekly date night with his secretary. The Costa Rica trip they were currently enjoying was actually their 3rd vacation together. Previous trips to San Francisco and Napa Valley had been disguised as business conferences and professional development opportunities. Derek had even claimed continuing education credits for one of these trips, submitting expense reports to Northwest financial advisors that characterized his romantic getaway with Natasha as a legitimate business expense. But the most damaging evidence came from the videos Natasha had sent throughout the day. In one clip, Derek was clearly visible discussing specific clients by name and sharing confidential information about their investment portfolio. He was violating client confidentiality agreements while intoxicated on vacation with his subordinate employee, creating potential legal liability for Northwest financial advisors that went far beyond personal misconduct. As evening approached, I made a decision that would change multiple lives forever. I wasn't going to wait for Derek to return from Costa Rica to confront him about his affair. I wasn't going to give him time to construct lies or move financial assets beyond my reach. And I wasn't going to let Marcus Rivera continue living in ignorance while his wife sent me taunting messages about her relationship with my husband. I opened my laptop and began composing 2 very different emails that would deliver justice more swiftly and completely than Derek and Natasha could possibly imagine. The first was addressed to Jonathan Hayes at Northwest Financial Advisor. The second was addressed to Marcus Rivera at his Nike email address, which I'd found through his LinkedIn profile. Both emails would include every photo, every video, and every piece of financial evidence that Natasha had so helpfully provided throughout the day. By tomorrow morning, Derek Thompson and Natasha Rivera would discover that their elaborate deception had consequences they'd never anticipated. And Marcus Rivera would learn the truth about his wife before she could return from Costa Rica and construct more lies about her relationship with Derek. I was about to turn Natasha's weapon against her in a way that would devastate her marriage, her career, and her future. The photos she'd sent to hurt me were about to become the evidence that destroyed everything she valued. Sometimes revenge arrives exactly when you need it most, delivered by the very person who thought they were hurting you. I spent the entire night crafting 2 emails that would serve as precision strikes against Derek and Natasha's carefully constructed deception. The first email to Jonathan Hayes required the tone of a concerned professional bringing serious misconduct to management's attention. The second to Marcus Rivera demanded a more delicate approach, as I was about to shatter an innocent man's world with information no husband should ever have to receive. For Jonathan Hayes, I wrote with the clinical precision of a business report. Dear Mr. Hayes, I am writing to bring to your attention serious violations of Northwest Financial Advisors' ethical conduct policies and potential legal liabilities involving senior partner Derek Thompson and executive assistant Natasha Rivera. The attached documentation reveals an ongoing romantic relationship between a supervisor and subordinate employee, misuse of company resources, and violations of client confidentiality agreements that could expose the firm to significant legal and reputational damage. I attached selected photos that clearly showed Derek and Natasha in romantic situations while documenting the dates and locations of their encounter. The financial records I included focused on Derek's use of business credit cards and expense accounts to fund personal activities, something that would be immediately recognizable to Hayes as grounds for termination and possible prosecution. Most damaging of all, I included the video clips where Derek discussed specific clients by name while intoxicated, creating clear evidence of confidentiality violations that could destroy trust with Northwest Financial Advisors' wealthy clientele. The email to Marcus Rivera required a completely different approach. This man deserved compassion along with the devastating truth about his wife's betrayal. Dear Mr. Rivera, I am writing to you about a matter that will be incredibly painful to learn but which you have the right to know. My name is Claire Thompson, and my husband Derek Thompson is the senior partner at Northwest Financial Advisors, where your wife Natasha works as an executive assistant. I have recently discovered that Derek and Natasha have been conducting an affair for several months, and I believe you deserve to know about this situation before it progresses further. I included a carefully selected subset of the photos Natasha had sent me, focusing on images that clearly documented the affair without being unnecessarily graphic or humiliating. The financial evidence I shared with Marcus focused on charges that suggested Natasha had been using their joint accounts to fund her share of the romantic getaways with Derek. I ended the email with an offer to provide additional information if he needed it, and my sincere apologies for being the bearer of such devastating news. Both emails were scheduled to send at exactly 8 a.m., precisely when Jonathan Hayes would be arriving at his office for his daily review of overnight correspondence, and when Marcus Rivera would be checking his work email before his first meetings at Nike. The timing was crucial. I wanted both men to receive this information simultaneously, preventing either Derek or Natasha from warning the other about exposure once the consequences began unfolding. But scheduling the emails was only the beginning of my strategic response. I spent hours researching Oregon's divorce laws and community property regulations, preparing for the legal battle that would inevitably follow once Derek returned from Costa Rica. Rachel had already explained that Oregon was a no-fault divorce state, but the financial fraud Derek had committed would be crucial for asset division and spousal support determination. I documented every withdrawal from our children's college funds, every credit card charge for romantic dinners and luxury hotels, and every business expense that Derek had fraudulently claimed while actually funding his affair. The total amount exceeded $40,000 over 6 months, money that had been stolen from our family's future to pay for Derek's midlife crisis with his secretary. The house we lived in was technically mine, inherited from my grandmother and renovated with money from a trust fund my parents had established for me in college. Derek's name was on the deed only because we'd added him during a refinancing 5 years ago to get better interest rates. This legal detail, which had seemed insignificant at the time, would now protect me from losing my home regardless of how the divorce proceedings unfolded. My freelance consulting business was entirely separate from Derek's income and investments, generating enough revenue to support myself and the children if necessary. Over the years, I'd maintained professional relationships with several major Portland companies, and my client base was strong enough to expand into full-time work if the divorce settlement required financial independence. As dawn approached, I realized I hadn't slept at all, but I felt more energized and focused than I had in months. The rage and hurt from discovering Derek's betrayal had crystallized into something much more powerful. A sense of purpose and control that I hadn't experienced since putting my career on hold to raise our children. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based entirely on my own judgment rather than accommodating Derek's preferences or family obligations. At 7:30 a.m., I received another message from Natasha's phone number. The photo showed her and Derek having breakfast on what looked like a private beach, with a note that read, "Derek's taking such good care of me. He says this is what real appreciation looks like, unlike what he gets at home. Thanks for being such a boring wife, Clay." The timing of this message, arriving just 30 minutes before my scheduled emails would detonate their world, felt like the universe providing one final piece of evidence for the destruction I was about to unleash. I screenshot this latest message and added it to both email drafts, updating the subject lines to read, "Urgent, immediate ethics violation and legal liability for Jonathan Hayes and important information about your wife's activities for Marcus Rivera." Then I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee watching the clock count down to 8 a.m. and the moment when Derek and Natasha's carefully constructed lies would begin collapsing around them. At exactly 8 a.m., both emails sent success. I immediately received delivery confirmations, and within minutes, red receipts began appearing. Jonathan Hayes opened his email at 8:07 a.m., and I could track through email analytics that he spent over 20 minutes reviewing the attachment. Marcus Rivera's email was opened at 8:12 a.m., and the metadata showed he downloaded every attachment I'd included. The first response came from Jonathan Hayes at 8:31 a.m. "Mrs. Thompson, thank you for bringing this matter to my attention. I am treating this as an urgent personnel and legal issue. Please be available for a call at your earliest convenience to discuss these allegations and the evidence you've provided. Be assured that Northwest Financial Advisors takes these matters with the utmost seriousness." 20 minutes later, my phone rang with a call from Hayes' direct office line. His voice was grave but professional as he explained that he'd already initiated an emergency investigation into Derek's conduct and had contacted the firm's legal counsel about potential liability issues. "Thompson, the evidence you've provided is extremely concerning, particularly the client confidentiality violations. I want you to know that we will be taking immediate action to protect our clients and our firm's integrity." Hayes explained that Derek's access to client accounts and firm resources would be suspended immediately, and that security would be changing locks and passwords throughout the Portland office to prevent any attempt at evidence tampering. "I'm also required to inform you that this matter will likely require involvement from regulatory authorities, given the potential for securities violations and fiduciary breaches." The conversation with Hayes lasted nearly an hour, during which he asked detailed questions about the timeline of Derek's misconduct and the financial evidence I'd gathered. He was particularly concerned about Derek's discussions of client information while intoxicated in Costa Rica, explaining that such violations could trigger investigations by multiple state and federal agencies. "Your husband's actions have put our entire firm at risk," Hayes said grimly. "This will have consequences far beyond his employment with us." While I was on the phone with Hayes, my computer began pinging with email notifications. Marcus Rivera had responded to my message, and his reply was heartbreaking in its confusion and pain. "Miss Thompson, I don't understand how this is possible. Natasha told me she was attending a professional development conference this week. She's been sending me photos of seminar sessions and networking events. Could there be some mistake?" I called Marcus immediately, knowing that his wife had been constructing elaborate lies about her activities in Costa Rica, while simultaneously sending me taunting messages about her affair with my husband. When he answered, his voice was shaky and uncertain, like someone trying to process information that contradicted everything he believed about his life. Marcus explained that Natasha had been planning this Costa Rica trip for weeks, presenting it as a mandatory professional development opportunity that Northwest Financial Advisors was requiring for all executive assistants. She'd shown him conference brochures and seminar schedules, and had been sending him photos throughout the week that supposedly documented her attendance at various business workshops. She sent me a picture yesterday of her taking notes during a financial planning seminar, Marcus said, his voice breaking slightly. But looking at the photos you sent me, that same timestamp shows her kissing your husband by a swimming pool. I don't understand how she could be in two places at once unless. His voice trailed off as the reality of his wife's deception began settling in. I gently explained that Natasha had been constructing two completely different narratives about her activities in Costa Rica, sending him fake conference photos while sending me real images of her affair with Derek. The level of premeditation required for such elaborate deception revealed something deeply disturbing about Natasha's character and her commitment to maintaining lies that protected her lifestyle while destroying two marriages. Marcus asked if he could see all the evidence I'd gathered, and I agreed to send him everything Natasha had shared with me throughout the previous day. I need to know exactly what my wife has been doing, and for how long, he said with a steadiness that impressed me. And I need to understand how much of our marriage has been built on lies. The financial evidence I shared with Marcus revealed that Natasha had been just as careless as Derek about hiding the costs of their affair. Charges to her credit cards matched the dates and locations of their romantic getaways, and she'd been using their joint savings account to pay for expensive lingerie, spa treatments, and her share of luxury accommodations. Marcus had unknowingly been funding his wife's affair with my husband for months. She told me the extra charges were for work clothes and professional development, Marcus said after reviewing the financial records. I thought she was investing in her career advancement. I was proud of how dedicated she seemed to her new job. The betrayal in his voice was profound, not just about the affair but about the systematic way Natasha had manipulated his trust and support to facilitate her relationship with Derek. While Marcus and I were comparing notes about our spouse's deception, my phone began ringing continuously with calls from Derek's number. He was clearly discovering that his access to Northwest Financial Advisors' systems had been revoked, and that his professional life was unraveling in real time. I declined every call, wanting him to experience the same powerlessness and confusion I'd felt when discovering his affair. The text messages from Derek started arriving at 9:47 a.m. Claire, something's wrong with my access at work. Call me immediately. This was followed by increasingly frantic messages as he realized the scope of his professional catastrophe. My email is locked out and security won't let me into the building. What did you do? The panic in his digital voice was satisfying in a way that surprised me. By 10 a.m., Natasha had also begun attempting to contact her husband. Marcus showed me the messages she was sending him, continuing her elaborate conference fiction while clearly trying to understand why Derek was experiencing professional problems. Marcus, honey, the conference is going great, but Derek seems stressed about something at work. Have you heard anything about problems at Northwest Financial? Her ability to maintain lies even while her world was collapsing was remarkable in its audacity. Marcus decided to respond to his wife with a message that would end her deception permanently. He sent her one of the photos she'd shared with me, the image of her kissing Derek by the infinity pool, with a simple message. Conference looks different than you describe. We'll talk when you get home. Then he blocked her number, cutting off her ability to construct more lies about her activities in Costa Rica. The silence from Derek and Natasha after Marcus's message was telling. They were finally beginning to understand that their affair had been exposed completely, and that both of their marriages were facing immediate consequences. But the professional ramifications for Derek were just beginning to unfold. Jonathan Hayes called me again at 11:15 a.m. with updates on Northwest Financial Advisors' response to Derek's misconduct. Mrs. Thompson, I've been in contact with our legal counsel and compliance department. Derek's partnership agreement includes morality clauses that make his termination immediate and forfeit his equity stake in the firm. Additionally, we're required to report potential securities violations to regulatory authority. Hayes explained that Derek's partnership interest, worth approximately $200,000, would be dissolved without compensation due to his violation of ethical conduct requirements. His clients were being reassigned to other partners, and the firm was preparing disclosure statements about Derek's departure that would protect Northwest Financial Advisors from liability, while making clear that his termination was for serious misconduct. There's also the matter of restitution for fraudulent expense claims, Hayes continued. Our preliminary accounting shows that Derek charged over $15,000 in personal expenses to company accounts. We'll be seeking full recovery of those funds, and this matter will be referred to law enforcement if necessary. The cascade of professional consequences was more severe than I'd anticipated. Derek wouldn't just be losing his job. He was facing potential criminal charges for fraud and securities violations. His reputation in Portland's financial community would be permanently destroyed, making it virtually impossible for him to continue working in his chosen field. But beyond the professional consequences, Derek was also facing personal financial ruin. The money he'd stolen from our children's college funds would need to be repaid immediately. The fraudulent expense claims to Northwest Financial Advisors would require restitution that could exceed $20,000. Combined with divorce proceedings that would leave him responsible for child support while having lost his primary source of income, Derek's financial future looked catastrophic. As the afternoon progressed, I received updates from both Jonathan Hayes and Marcus Rivera about the continuing fallout from Derek and Natasha's exposed affair. Hayes reported that Northwest Financial Advisors' compliance department had discovered additional evidence of misconduct in Derek's client file, including inappropriate personal charges and questionable investment recommendations that appeared designed to generate higher commissions rather than serve client interests. Marcus had spent the day reviewing his joint financial accounts with Natasha and discovering the full extent of her financial deception. "She's been stealing from our savings for months," he told me during our second phone conversation. "Money I thought was going toward our future home purchase has been funding luxury vacations with your husband. She's destroyed our financial planning just like she's destroyed our marriage." The symmetry of Derek and Natasha's mutual destruction was becoming clear. Both had been so confident in their ability to deceive their spouses that they'd been careless about hiding evidence of their misconduct. Both had stolen money from their families to fund an affair that was now costing them their marriages, their careers, and their financial future. By evening, neither Derek nor Natasha had been able to reach their spouses or access their professional resources. They were stranded in Costa Rica with their affair exposed, their jobs terminated, and their marriages effectively ended. The romantic getaway they'd planned as a celebration of their relationship had become a prison where they could only wait for the legal and financial consequences of their choices to fully unfold. I spent that evening with Sophie and Ryan, who were still unaware of the catastrophic changes happening in our family. Tomorrow I would need to begin the difficult conversation about their father's betrayal and the divorce proceedings that would reshape our lives. But tonight I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. A sense of control over my own destiny and confidence that justice was being served to those who had tried to destroy my family. The next morning brought a series of desperate phone calls from Derek that I continued to ignore while preparing breakfast for Sophie and Ryan. My children had no idea that their father's world had imploded overnight, and I wanted to handle their discovery of his betrayal with care and planning rather than letting them witness the chaos of his panicked attempts to control the damage he'd caused. At 7:23 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number that I recognized as belonging to Derek. He must have borrowed someone else's phone in Costa Rica, probably another hotel guest, to try reaching me after I'd blocked his regular number. The message was frantic and incoherent. "Claire, I can explain everything. Don't listen to whatever lies people are telling you. I'm trying to get home, but there's been some kind of mistake with my accounts. Please call me at this number." The audacity of calling Natasha's photo documentation of their affair lies was almost impressive. Derek was still trying to manipulate reality even after being caught with undeniable evidence of his betrayal. I screenshot his message and forwarded it to Rachel Martinez with a note: "Husband still attempting to gaslight me even after termination and exposure. Please document for divorce proceedings." Sophie noticed my distraction during breakfast and asked if everything was okay. She was perceptive in the way that 16-year-old girls often are, sensing tension even when adults try to hide it. "Mom, you seem different this morning. Did something happen with Dad's business trip?" Her question pierced my heart because she had no idea that her father's business trip was actually a romantic vacation with his secretary that had just destroyed our family. Ryan, focused on his soccer equipment and morning routine, remained oblivious to the undercurrents of tension. At 14, he was still young enough to trust that his parents would handle adult problems without involving him. I envied his innocence, knowing that both children would soon be forced to confront the reality of their father's betrayal and the divorce proceedings that would follow. I decided to speak with Sophie and Ryan together that evening, after school, when I could give them my full attention and answer their questions without the pressure of morning schedules and teenage obligations. For now, I sent them off to their normal day while I prepared for the legal and financial battles that would define our family's immediate future. Rachel Martinez had scheduled an emergency appointment for 9 a.m. to review the evidence I'd gathered and begin preparing divorce documents. Her office in downtown Portland occupied the top floor of a renovated warehouse, with exposed brick walls and panoramic windows that overlooked the Willamette River. The space felt both professional and comforting, exactly what I needed while discussing the end of my 15-year marriage. Rachel's paralegal had prepared a comprehensive analysis of Oregon's divorce laws as they applied to my situation. The financial fraud Derek had committed would be crucial for asset division, particularly since he'd stolen money from our children's college funds and used community property to finance his affair. The court will view Derek's actions as economic misconduct, Rachel explained, which gives us grounds to seek reimbursement and a larger share of marital assets. We spent 2 hours reviewing every piece of evidence I'd gathered, from Natasha's taunting photos to Derek's fraudulent expense report. Rachel was particularly interested in the timeline of Derek's deception, noting that his systematic theft from our family accounts demonstrated premeditation rather than impulsive behavior. This isn't a case of a marriage falling apart gradually, she observed. Derek made deliberate choices to steal from his family to fund an affair. That level of financial misconduct will influence everything from asset division to custody arrangement. The legal strategy Rachel outlined was comprehensive and designed to protect my interests while ensuring Derek faced full accountability for his actions. We would file for divorce immediately, seeking temporary restraining orders to prevent Derek from accessing or transferring any additional marital assets. The house would remain in my possession since it was technically my separate property, inherited from my grandmother and renovated with my trust fund money. Derek's partnership interest in Northwest Financial Advisors, now forfeited due to his ethical violations, had been worth approximately $200,000. While that equity was lost, Rachel explained that Derek would still be liable for child support and potentially spousal support despite his termination. The court will impute income to Derek based on his earning capacity, she said. His professional misconduct doesn't absolve him of financial obligations to his children. As we discussed custody arrangements, Rachel asked about Derek's relationship with Sophie and Ryan. Both children adored their father and had no idea about his affair or the financial fraud he'd committed against them. We'll need to consider how Derek's actions affect his fitness as a parent, Rachel noted. Stealing from his children's college funds demonstrates a concerning disregard for their welfare. I left Rachel's office with a thick folder of legal documents and a clear understanding of the battles ahead. The divorce would be complex due to Derek's professional misconduct and the financial fraud involved, but Rachel was confident about achieving a favorable outcome. More importantly, I felt protected by legal strategies that would prevent Derek from causing additional financial damage to our family. My phone had been buzzing continuously with messages from Derek's borrowed number throughout my meeting with Rachel. Each message was more desperate than the last, revealing his growing understanding that his professional and personal life had been completely destroyed. Claire, I know you're angry, but we can work this out. I love you and the kids. Please don't let lawyers destroy our family over one mistake. The characterization of a 6-month affair involving systematic theft and elaborate deception as one mistake was so absurd that I actually laughed out loud. Derek was still trying to minimize his actions and manipulate my emotions, apparently believing that his charm and persuasion skills would overcome documentary evidence of his betrayal. At 11:47 a.m., I received a call from Marcus Rivera asking if we could meet for coffee to discuss the legal actions our respective spouses were facing. His voice sounded hollow, like someone who hadn't slept and was struggling to process the destruction of his marriage. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and discover this was all a horrible nightmare, he said. But then I look at those photos again and realize my wife has been lying to me for months. We met at a quiet coffee shop in the Pearl District, not far from my home. Marcus looked exhausted and older than his 32 years, with the kind of emotional exhaustion that comes from discovering that your entire life has been built on deception. He'd brought his own folder of evidence, financial records showing how Natasha had been stealing from their joint accounts to fund her affair with Derek. I've been going through our bank statements all night, Marcus said, spreading documents across our table. Every romantic dinner, every luxury hotel, every piece of expensive lingerie she bought for your husband, I paid for all of it without knowing what it was for. His hands shook slightly as he pointed to various charges that corresponded with the dates and locations in Natasha's photo. Marcus had also discovered that Natasha had been forging his signature on financial documents to access their savings accounts and investment funds. She moved $8,000 from our retirement account last month, he explained. When I asked about it, she said it was for a family emergency her parents were facing. But looking at the timing, it was right before her last Costa Rica trip with Derek. The financial fraud Natasha had committed against Marcus was actually more extensive than Derek's theft from our family accounts. She'd been systematically draining their savings while constructing elaborate lies about family emergencies and investment opportunities. Marcus had trusted his wife completely, never questioning her financial decisions or monitoring their joint accounts closely. I'm a software engineer, Marcus said with bitter irony. I create systems to prevent fraud and protect data integrity, but I never thought to protect myself from my own wife's deception. His professional expertise in security systems made his personal vulnerability to Natasha's manipulation even more painful. Marcus had already contacted a divorce attorney and was beginning legal proceedings against Natasha. Unlike my situation, where Derek's professional misconduct had resulted in immediate termination, Natasha's employment status remained uncertain. Northwest Financial Advisors was still conducting their investigation into her role in Derek's ethical violation. I called Jonathan Hayes this morning, Marcus explained. He told me that Natasha's position as Derek's executive assistant makes her complicit in the confidentiality violations and expense fraud. She could face criminal charges along with termination. The possibility that both Derek and Natasha might face prosecution added another layer of consequences to their affair. As Marcus and I compared notes about our spouse's deception, a pattern emerged that neither of us had fully understood before. Derek and Natasha hadn't just been having an affair. They'd been systematically exploiting their professional relationship to steal from both of their families, while using their marriages as cover for their criminal activity. They turned our trust into a weapon against us, Marcus observed. Every time I supported Natasha's career advancement, every time you trusted Derek's business commitments, we were actually enabling them to steal from us more effectively. The insight was profound and painful, revealing how thoroughly we'd been manipulated by people we love. At 1:15 p.m., my phone rang with a call from an unknown Costa Rican number. Derek had apparently found another way to try reaching me, probably through the hotel's business center or a local phone service. I answered this time, curious to hear what he would say now that his professional life had been completely destroyed and his affair was exposed to both families. "Claire, thank God you answered." Derek's voice was frantic and desperate. "I don't know what lies people have been telling you, but I need you to know that I love you and our family. Whatever problems we've had, we can work through them together." His attempt to frame his affair as problems we've had was so audacious that I was momentarily speechless. "Derek, I have photos of you kissing Natasha by a swimming pool," I said calmly. "I have videos of you discussing our private life with her. I have financial records showing you've stolen $40,000 from our family accounts to fund your affair. Which part of that qualifies as lies people have told me?" The silence on Derek's end of the call lasted nearly 30 seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed completely, losing the confident charm I'd known for 15 years, and revealing something desperate and broken underneath. "Claire, I can explain everything. The photos don't show the full context. Natasha and I never meant for this to happen. It just got out of control." I found myself laughing at his continued attempts to manipulate reality. "Derek, you stole money from Sophie and Ryan's college funds, to pay for romantic vacations with your secretary. You've been lying to me for months about where you were and what you were doing. You've lost your job, your partnership, and your professional reputation. What exactly do you think you're going to explain that will make any of this acceptable? Derek's response revealed the depth of his delusion about his situation. I made some mistakes, but I'm still the same man you married. I'm still Sophie and Ryan's father. I'm still the person who's provided for this family for 15 years. One bad decision doesn't erase everything we've built together. The characterization of 6 months of systematic deception and theft as one bad decision was so divorced from reality that I realized Derek might genuinely believe his own lie. He'd been living in a fantasy world where his affair was just a temporary mistake that could be forgiven and forgotten if he could find the right words to explain it away. Derek, your access to our joint accounts has been frozen, I informed him. Your partnership at Northwest Financial has been terminated. Marcus Rivera knows about your affair with his wife. Jonathan Hayes is pursuing criminal charges for fraud and securities violations. Your children are about to learn that their father is a thief and a liar. Which part of that situation do you think represents a temporary mistake? The sound Derek made was somewhere between a sob and a gasp. For the first time in our conversation, he seemed to understand that his actions had consequences he couldn't charm or manipulate his way out of. Claire, please don't tell the kids about this. Whatever happens between us, they don't need to know the details. I can come home and we can work something out privately. His concern for protecting his image with our children, after stealing from their college funds to pay for his affair, was breathtaking in its selfishness. Derek, Sophie and Ryan deserve to know the truth about why their parents are getting divorced. They deserve to understand that their college funds were stolen by their father to pay for his romantic vacations with another woman. You don't get to control how your children learn about your betrayal. The call ended with Derek begging me not to involve the children in adult problems and promising to make everything right if I would just give him a chance to explain. His complete inability to accept responsibility for his actions or understand the scope of his betrayal confirmed that divorce was the only viable option for protecting myself and our children from further manipulation. Marcus and I spent the rest of the afternoon comparing our legal strategies and supporting each other through the emotional aftermath of discovering our spouse's affair. We'd both been betrayed by people we trusted completely, and we'd both been financially victimized by elaborate deceptions that had been planned and executed over months. I keep thinking about all the times Natasha came home from work talking about how wonderful Derek was as a boss, Marcus said. She would tell me stories about his leadership style and his commitment to ethical business practices. She was literally describing her affair partner to me while pretending to admire his professional quality. The psychological manipulation both Derek and Natasha had employed against us was sophisticated and cruel. They'd used our marriages as shields for their affair while simultaneously undermining our trust and self-confidence. Derek had been telling me I was boring and predictable, while Natasha had been telling Marcus that she was working late to advance her career. By evening, I felt prepared to have the difficult conversation with Sophie and Ryan about their father's betrayal and the changes coming to our family. The legal protections Rachel had put in place would prevent Derek from causing additional financial damage, and the evidence I'd gathered would ensure that the divorce proceedings protected our interests. But more importantly, I felt like I was reclaiming my identity and my power after months of being undermined and deceived. Derek's affair had been devastating, but his exposure had also revealed my own strength and resilience. I was no longer the boring wife he'd complained about to his mistress. I was the woman who'd systematically destroyed his life in less than 24 hours using nothing more than the evidence he'd provided through his own carelessness. As I prepared dinner for my children, knowing it would be our last normal evening before everything changed, I felt something unexpected: gratitude toward Natasha Rivera for sending me those photos. Her cruel attempt to humiliate me had instead given me everything I needed to achieve justice and protect my family's future. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing that could have happened. That evening, I sat Sophie and Ryan down in our living room for what I knew would be one of the most difficult conversations of their lives. The setting sun cast long shadows through our floor-to-ceiling windows, and I could see Mount Hood in the distance, its peak catching the last light of day. This view had always symbolized stability and permanence to our family, but tonight it felt like a backdrop to the end of everything they'd known as normal. Sophie immediately sensed the gravity of the moment. She'd been watching me carefully all day, her teenage intuition picking up on the tension I'd been trying to hide. Ryan, still focused on his soccer cleats and homework, looked up with the innocent expectation that this would be another routine family discussion about chores or weekend plans. "I need to tell you both something very important about your father," I began, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "He's been lying to our family for months, and there are going to be some big changes in our lives because of choices he's made." Sophie's expression immediately shifted to alarm, while Ryan's face showed the kind of confusion that comes from hearing words that don't make sense in context. I explained Derek's affair in terms that were honest but age-appropriate, focusing on the betrayal of trust rather than intimate detail. "Your father has been having a relationship with his secretary, Natasha, and he's been stealing money from our family accounts to pay for expensive trips and gifts for her. This included money from your college savings accounts." Ryan's reaction was immediate and heartbreaking. "Dad took money from our college funds, but he's always telling us how important education is and how we need to work hard for our future." The betrayal hit him at a fundamental level, challenging everything he'd believed about his father's values and priorities. Sophie's response was more complex, cycling through denial, anger, and hurt in rapid succession. "This can't be true. Dad loves us. He wouldn't steal from us." But even as she spoke, I could see her remembering recent changes in Derek's behavior. Late nights at the office, expensive purchases that didn't benefit our family, and the subtle ways he'd been distancing himself from our daily life. I showed them carefully selected evidence that proved Derek's betrayal without being unnecessarily graphic or humiliating. The financial records were particularly effective because they told a clear story of systematic theft from our family account. Every romantic dinner, every luxury hotel, every piece of expensive jewelry had been paid for with money that belonged to our family's future. "How long has this been going on?" Sophie asked, her voice small and wounded. When I explained that the affair had been happening for at least 6 months, possibly longer, she began crying. "So when he was helping me with my college applications, he was already stealing from my college fund. When he was talking about my future, he was destroying." Ryan's questions were more practical, reflecting his 14-year-old understanding of family finances. "What happens to our house? What happens to our family? Are we going to be poor now?" His concerns about financial security broke my heart because they revealed how Derek's actions had stolen not just money but also the sense of safety and stability that children deserve. I assured both children that our home was secure and that we would be financially stable despite Derek's betrayal. The house was technically mine, inherited from my grandmother, and my consulting business was strong enough to support our family. "Your father's actions have hurt us, but they haven't destroyed our ability to take care of ourselves," I told them. The conversation lasted nearly 2 hours, with both children asking questions about the divorce, custody arrangements, and what their relationship with Derek would look like going forward. I emphasized that Derek's betrayal of our marriage didn't diminish his love for them, even though his actions had demonstrated a concerning disregard for their welfare. Sophie asked the question I'd been dreading. "Did you know something was wrong? Were there signs that Dad was lying to us?" I explained that I'd trusted their father completely, and that his deception had been systematic and sophisticated. "Sometimes the people we love most are the ones who can hurt us most deeply because we never expect them to betray our trust." Ryan wanted to know if Derek would be coming home and if there was any possibility of reconciliation. I gently explained that Derek's actions had made it impossible for our marriage to continue, but that he would always be their father and would maintain a relationship with them through custody arrangement. "Your father made choices that destroyed our family, but those choices don't change the fact that he loves you both." The next morning brought news that Derek and Natasha had been arrested at the San Jose airport while trying to board a flight back to Portland. Jonathan Hayes had filed fraud charges against Derek for misuse of company funds, and the Costa Rican authorities had detained both of them pending extradition proceedings. The romantic vacation that was supposed to be a celebration of their affair had become a prison where they faced international legal complications. Marcus Rivera called with updates on Natasha's situation. She'd been terminated from Northwest Financial Advisors and was facing both criminal charges and civil liability for her role in Derek's financial fraud. The company's lawyers discovered that Natasha had been helping Derek falsify expense reports and hiding evidence of his misconduct. Marcus explained. She wasn't just having an affair with her boss, she was actively participating in stealing from the company and from both of our families. The legal proceedings moved swiftly once Derek and Natasha were extradited back to Portland. Derek's attorney advised him to accept a plea agreement that would require full restitution of stolen funds in exchange for avoiding felony charges. The total amount exceeded $60,000 when interest and penalties were included, effectively bankrupting Derek and ensuring that he would spend years repaying the money he'd stolen from our family and Northwest Financial Advisor. Rachel Martinez had prepared divorce papers that protected every aspect of our family's interests while ensuring Derek faced maximum accountability for his actions. The settlement agreement required Derek to repay all stolen funds immediately, surrender any claim to our home or my business assets, and accept a custody arrangement that reflected his demonstrated unreliability as a parent. Derek's attempts to negotiate better terms were unsuccessful because the evidence of his misconduct was overwhelming and undeniable. His new attorney, a public defender assigned after his private lawyer withdrew due to unpaid fees, advised him that fighting the divorce would only result in additional legal costs and public exposure of his criminal behavior. The most satisfying moment came when Derek was forced to sign documents acknowledging that he had stolen money from Sophie and Ryan's college funds and agreeing to repay every dollar with interest. His signature on those papers was shaky and reluctant, but it provided legal protection for our children's educational future and formal acknowledgement of his betrayal. Natasha's divorce from Marcus proceeded even more quickly than ours. She had no assets to protect and no leverage to negotiate favorable terms. Marcus kept their house, their savings and their retirement accounts, while Natasha faced criminal charges and civil liability that would define her financial future for decades. The woman who had taunted me about Derek's generosity and my boring life ended up homeless, unemployed and facing prosecution for fraud. 6 months after receiving those first photos from Natasha, I stood in the same kitchen where I'd discovered Derek's betrayal. But everything had changed. Sophie and Ryan were adjusting to their new reality with resilience that amazed me. Sophie had received early acceptance to her dream college with a scholarship that would cover most of her expenses. Ryan had made varsity soccer and was excelling academically, proving that Derek's theft hadn't destroyed their futures. My consulting business had expanded significantly as word spread about my professional skills and personal resilience. Several Portland companies had hired me specifically because they admired how I'd handled the crisis in my personal life. The income from my expanded client base was actually higher than what Derek had been contributing to our family finances before his termination. Derek had moved into a studio apartment in a less desirable part of Portland, working as a customer service representative for a credit monitoring company. His professional reputation in the financial industry was permanently destroyed, and he would never again work in a position that required fiduciary responsibility or client trust. The man who had once managed millions of dollars in investment assets was now processing calls from customers disputing charges on their credit reports. The children maintained a relationship with their father through supervised visits that were often awkward and strained. Derek's attempts to explain his actions or justify his behavior were met with increasing skepticism from Sophie and Ryan, who had learned to recognize manipulation and deception. They loved their father but no longer trusted him, a distinction that would define their relationship for years to come. Natasha had disappeared from Portland entirely after serving 3 months in county jail for fraud charges. Marcus heard rumors that she'd moved to another state and was working in retail while dealing with the legal and financial consequences of her actions. The glamorous life she'd envisioned with Derek had become a cautionary tale about the consequences of betraying trust and stealing from innocent people. Marcus and I had developed a friendship based on our shared experience of betrayal and recovery. We occasionally met for coffee to discuss our children's adjustment to divorce and our own healing journeys. He'd started dating again and was building a new life based on the hard-won wisdom that comes from surviving deception. "I'm grateful for what happened," he told me during one of our conversations. "It taught me to trust my instincts and never ignore red flags in relationships." The most profound change in my life wasn't financial or legal but psychological. I'd discovered strength and resilience I didn't know I possessed, and I'd learned that my worth wasn't defined by Derek's opinion of me or his willingness to remain faithful to our marriage. The woman Derek had described as boring and predictable had systematically destroyed his life and protected her family's future using nothing more than intelligence, planning, and the evidence he'd provided through his own carelessness. On the first anniversary of receiving Natasha's photos, I took Sophie and Ryan on a weekend trip to the Oregon coast. As we walked along the beach, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors, Ryan asked if I was happy about how everything had turned out. The question made me pause and consider the complex emotions of the past year. "I'm not happy that your father betrayed our family," I told him honestly, "but I'm proud of how we survived his betrayal and built something better from the ruins he left behind." Sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the catalyst for the best things that could happen. Sophie, now a senior in high school and preparing for college, had become more mature and insightful than many adults. "Mom, I used to think Dad was perfect and that you were just the boring parent who made us do chores and follow rules, but now I understand that you were the one holding our family together while he was tearing it apart. I'm proud to be your daughter." As we stood together on that beach, watching the waves crash against the rocks, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete contentment with my life and confidence in my ability to handle whatever challenges lay ahead. Derek's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also revealed my own strength and shown me that I was capable of protecting my family and building a better future. The photos Natasha had sent to humiliate me had become the foundation of my liberation. Her cruel attempt to destroy my self-confidence had instead given me everything I needed to destroy her affair, protect my children, and reclaim my life. Sometimes revenge arrives in the most unexpected packages, delivered by the very people who thought they were hurting you. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.